Okay, so we completed up to electrical properties of nanostructured materials in the last class. So previously we have seen why melting point of the nanomaterials are different from that of the bulk materials. Then we moved to lattice parameters. They are different from the nanomaterials and bulk materials. So then we have elaborately seen density of state and its connected terminologies. So after dwelling on density of states, then band gap engineering. So we have linked with optical properties. There we have seen separately for semiconductors and separately for the nanometals. So then last three classes we have dwelt on electrical properties of nanostructured materials. So the take home point from the previous class or from the electrical properties are electrical properties of the non-structured materials are different from that of the bulk materials. In case of metals, semiconductors and insulators, there is decrease in the electrical conduction or electronic conduction. Due to several reasons, we have seen increased band gap is one of the main reason in the case of semiconductors and insulators for the decrease of electrical conduction. Even in the case of metals, if there is a development of band gap or Kubo gap, if not band gap, then the metallic conductivity will not be no longer same as that of the bulk material. It will be less, of course, depending on the type of the nanostructures. So the newcomers may be finding difficult. We have three types of nanostructures: 3D, 2D, 1D nanomaterials in terms of confinement dimension. So depending on these confinement dimensions, the conductivity will be different. In the case of 3D nanostructures, that is quantum dots or quantum boxes. So definitely the conductivity of even metals will be different, will be less compared to that of the bulk material, bulk counterpart. So then we have also linked with the other minor reasons, change in the topography or morphology, canopy, or the material might become even pure in the case of maybe carbon and related materials. They show increased conductivity. Metals, semiconductors, insulators show decreased electrical conduction when you move from bulk to nano. Exceptions are carbon and polymer materials. Carbon and polymer materials. When you make carbon nanotubes, they show metallic conductivity, the mixture of metallic and semiconducting conductivity. But we know that graphite is a semi-metal, no band gap, but the conductivity is not that of the metallic nature. So we call graphite as a semi-metal. But when you make a carbon nanotube, it shows metallic conductivity. Amazing. That is why this carbon nanomaterials or even the related materials, graphene, it has started ruling the world, materials world. Okay, slowly it started ruling. You name any optoelectronic or electronic devices, from solar cells to, you imagine set FET or transistors. Now people are replacing with the semiconducting industry is replacing with the carbon materials. That is essentially carbon nanotube and graphene and related materials. And in the case of polymers, we get increased conductivity when we move from bulk to nano, because at nanoscale, they have a better orientation. The nanofibers, they have a better interaction at a nanoscale and facilitate for the increased conductivity. Otherwise, metals, semiconductors, insulators, they show decreased conductivity at a nanoscale, compared to their bulk counterparts. That was the take-home message from the electrical properties. Anything would like to add to this? Anybody would like to add or make some comments, clarification, additions, suggestions? You are most welcome to share. So we have last two more properties to be dealt in this unit. So of course, I have not touched on the carbon nanotube. We will see in the next unit. Though the carbon nanotube content in the syllabus is in the first unit, I usually take it in the second unit for the continuity. So anything else you would like to add? Make some comments, clarifications, suggestions, additions? We'll go ahead. Okay. So today, hopefully, we will complete this unit 1. We are left out with the two more properties, as I told, magnetic properties and mechanical properties. What are magnetic properties? What do we mean by magnetic property? Can I have any response? What are magnetic property? So electrical property, we know it conducts electricity. So when the conduction is by the electron and holes, we call such conductivity as electronic conductivity. There is another method of having a conductivity. Can anyone name the other method of other way of having the conductivity established in any materials or in certain materials other than electrons and holes?
So induction.
Okay, so the species responsible for the electrical conduction or electronic conduction. So as we know, they are electrons and holes. Depending on, maybe in the case of metals, only electrons. And in the case of semiconductors and insulators, they do not have the conductivity. If at all they have, so the combination of electrons and holes. So depending on the dopant level or the majority of the population of the charge carriers, whether it is N-type or P-type, in the case of semiconductor, we call them as a N-type conductor, semiconductor, P-type semiconductor. There the conduction is based on the majority of the charged species, electron or holes. There is another way of having the established conductivity in materials. So the induction or hopping or mobility, they are all mechanism for the conduction. To understand the conduction mechanism, that is by means of hopping, electrons are moving. Okay, so the conduction mechanism. The conduction is due to what particles? If there is any movement of charged particles, then only we can have a conduction. So two particles we know in generally in metals, in materials, electrons and holes. Is there any other species that are responsible for establishing the conductivity of materials? No, right? Okay. So I'm sure you would have heard about ionic conductivity. We are talking about electronic conductivity or electrical conduction. Similar to electronic conduction or electrical conduction, we have another type of conduction established by the charged species. Here they are not electrons and holes, here ions. Ions such as H+. What is H+? Proton. Ions such as lithium+, lithium ion. Ions such as sodium+, sodium ion. Or ions such as fluoride, F-. Ions such as bromide, chloride, sulfate, nitrate. These are all charged species, similar to electron and holes. They also facilitate conduction in materials. In lower classes, the teachers are taught in this regard with the use of table salt. You take table salt in the solid state and try to establish the conductivity or connectivity. or close the circuit with the solid NaCl, that is table salt, sodium chloride, natrium chloride, it will not conduct. But the same sodium chloride, you dissolve it in water, then take the two terminals, establish the circuit. Have you witnessed it will be conducting? It is conducting. Solid, which was not conducting or which is not conducting in the solid state, the same material, you dissolve it in water and establish the circuit, it will establish the conductivity. If you have a pure water without the sodium chloride, will it conduct? Very, very minimum. If you take a pure water, no conductivity, 10 power minus 6 or minus 7 ohms, almost insulator. If water is conducting means it is having some ingredients. It is having some ionic ingredients. They are responsible. But in the case of salt solution, we intentionally add salt, table salt for that matter. Or it can be any salt for that matter. If not sodium chloride, potassium chloride, sodium nitrate, potassium nitrate, aluminum carbonate, or anything which must dissolve and generate the anions and cations. Then, depending on the mobility, the conduction will be established. The conduction established or facilitated by the mobility of charged species, here not the electron or holes, here by the positively charged ions or negatively charged ions, is known as electrolytic conduction or ionic conduction. This is in the solution. There are solids, they also have the conduction by ion movement. There are solids, they are having a electronic conduction or electrical conduction by ion mobility, not necessarily by electrons. So we will see in the next semester fuel cells. There we will read or we will learn about solid oxide fuel cells. Solid oxide fuel cells. They are basically fuel cell, electrochemical energy conversion devices, or energy conversion devices simply by means of electrochemical principles at a solid state using solid oxides. We know oxides, metal oxides. For example, aluminum oxide, magnesium oxide, silicon oxide, nickel oxide. These are all oxides. There are oxides at a certain temperature. They show conduction, not necessarily by electron or holes, by movement of these such kind of charged ions. For example, O2 minus, oxide ion, lithium ion, sodium ion, not necessarily in the liquid state, in the solid state. Currently, this properties is being exploited for energy storage application. You believe it or not. Solid state lithium batteries you would have heard, or solid state batteries you would have heard. People are looking for flexible batteries. They want to integrate in the circuit. Then we need to have a conduction in the solid state. And we want to have a lithium ion conduction. So it is possible to establish using such materials. So even in the solid state, need not be only in the solution state. They are ionic conduction, both in the solid state and the electrolyte in the liquid state. Okay, I think I went into different directions. Okay, so in the same way, what do we mean by magnetic property? We'll come back. What do we mean by magnetic property? Something to do with the magnetic, right? Magnets. Either it will repel or it will attract. A material or the phenomena or the property of the material which is either repelling or attracting towards the magnet is a magnetic property. There is a magnetic flux or magnetic force. We have our conventional magnets. What they made of? Neodymium. Okay. So the neodymium speakers and hard magnets, those and all, we have been using it. Neodymium, combination of neodymium, or the good old magnetic materials, iron group materials. Have you heard about iron group materials, iron group elements? Yes, iron, cobalt, nickel. These three elements are known as iron group elements in the periodic table. The special features of these materials or elements are these three are magnetic. It means they get attracted towards a physical magnet. Iron, ferrum, cobalt, nickel, and the related materials. Some of their oxides are also magnetic. Ferrites, Fe2O3, or cobaltite, CO3O4, or nickel ferrite, NiFe2O4. Don't be fear. I will not ask you to give the formula for all these compounds. Don't worry. So iron group elements and the related some of the compounds are magnetic. It means they get attracted to the magnet, physical magnet, neodymium magnet. There are materials they don't get attracted to the physical magnet. They are non-magnetic materials. The materials which are getting attracted to the magnet, physical magnets, are magnetic materials. The property associated with this magnetic attraction is, we name it as a magnetic property. Why certain materials are having such property? What is the origin for such magnetic property? If I ask you now, what is the origin for the conductivity of the metals, I am sure you will tell it is mobility of the electrons. If I ask you what is the reason for the optical property of the semiconductor, or the different emission colors of semiconductor, or very specifically semiconducting nanostructures, what is the reason? You will tell there is increase in band gap. When the incident light is falling on the semiconducting colloid, it absorbs the light, and the electron present in the ground state picks up the energy, sufficient energy, and goes to the excited state, and there is a creation of electron and hole pair known as exciton, and it is exciton is having a certain lifetime, and it will undergo decay, either radiative or non-radiative decay. If it undergoes radiative decay, it will show some color. That color will be different from that of the absorption color, according to the color wave. That is the reason. Similarly, let us ask, what is the reason for magnetic properties of materials? Anybody has response? Again, here also, the motion of the electrons. We have two motion of the electrons, or movement of the electrons. Orbital motion of the electron and spin momentum, spin motion of the electron are the responsible for magnetic properties of the materials. This is not new. I'm sure you would have studied in the lower classes. I'm trying to link to the nanoscale properties. So I have taken this basic thing. So the two phenomena are responsible for the bringing about magnetic properties of the materials. So we know atoms, we know molecules, we also know materials. Materials are the collection of molecules. Molecules are at least more than one atom will have. Atoms, single entity, okay, single entity. So we know that when you look up the electronic configuration of these atoms or molecules, we have in the center of the atom, nucleus. Center of the atom, nucleus. With the nucleus at the center, then the electrons are revolving around the nucleus. Depending on the elements, they have K shell. They also have, in addition to K shell, L shell. Then depending on the elements, higher elements, K, L, M, N, etc. shells. And in each shell, there is a maximum number of electron can be revolving, 2n square, where n is the principal quantum number, not 0, starting from 1. The orbital, this path, the electron revolving around the nucleus in a single atom, is known as orbital. And it is located within the shell. We have K shell, L shell, M shell, N shell. In the K shell, the lowest energy are close to the nucleus, highly bound to the nucleus, can accommodate maximum 2 electrons. The next shell L, 2 plus 6, 8 electron, according to 2n square rule. Some name is there, half bar rule, maybe some rule is there for the Hund's rule or half bar rule. That equation is known as some rule is there, 2n square. So the one reason for having the magnetic property for material is electron revolving around the nucleus. We have sun in the solar system and all the planets are revolving around the sun. Similar thing happening in the atoms. In the earth movement, the earth is revolving around the sun. Not only that, earth also spins on its own axis. Earth also spins on its own axis. Similarly, electron not only revolving around the nucleus, electron also revolves on its own axis. These two movement or mobility or the positional change, we call them as motion of the electron, are the responsible for magnetic properties. At the macroscopic, in the bulk materials, we have collection of atoms in the bulk material. How many atoms? At least 10 power 23, equal to Avogadro number. So each atom has a nucleus and around them electrons are revolving. Not only electrons are revolving, electron also spins on its own axis. So 10 power 23 atoms all having this phenomena, and there is a macroscopic magnetic materials. For example, iron, cobalt, nickel, and their related materials. And it is possible to quantify this spin only magnetic moment using this Bohr equation, BHOR, BOHR, Bohr, Niels Bohr, Bohr equation. Using this equation, mu is equal to root of n into n plus 2, where n is number of unpaired electrons. This is one of the competitive exam question. You will be asked to, you will be given an ion, metal ion or any ion, and you will be asked to predict what is the Bohr magneton associated with this species. You will have to know how many unpaired electrons are there. What are paired electrons and unpaired electrons? In an orbital, so maximum 2 electrons depending on the orbitals. In s orbital, only 2 electrons can accommodate. In the p orbitals, maximum 6 electrons can be accommodated. In d orbitals, so 10, right? Yes, 10. Then f orbital, 14. 2, 6, 10, 14. These are the combinations in the respective orbitals. So those electrons either can be paired or they can be unpaired. Both the electron can be orienting in this parallel way, or one may be upward, one may be lower downward spin. So we call this a paired spin, upward downward. This is unpaired separately. So you identify how many electrons are unpaired and put it here. It can be 1 or 2, etc. Then compute this, you will get Bohr magnetic at macroscope. Or we know that electron has a spin because it is spinning. Spin quantum number. I don't want to go to detail. Spin, electron has a spin. And it is quantified of one electron is half spin. If you have one unpaired electron, either you can directly put here 1 or use half, in this case yes. N is number of unpaired electron, S is spin of the electron. Either way you will get the same number. You will quantify any material having non-zero Bohr magneton, BM, Bohr magneton will be magnetic. Any material having non-zero Bohr magneton will have spin only magnetic moment. Then you think of macroscopic level, how much will be. Based on that, so the magnetic properties of the materials are classified into diamagnetic, paramagnetic, ferromagnetic, ferrimagnetic, antiferromagnetic. So many are there. Several. Diamagnetism, paramagnetism, ferromagnetism, antiferro, antiferri. Ferri, antiferro. So this is the magnetic macroscopic level. Diamagnetic material, as schematically you are seeing, there are no electrons. Paramagnetic materials and rest of the ferromagnetic materials, there are electrons. Imagine that these materials are placed in a magnetic moment or magnetic field. I'm sure you'll agree with me, the non-magnetic material or diamagnetic material will oppose the field. The rest of the magnetic materials will align to the field. Even in this case, ferromagnetism, ferrimagnetism. So ferromagnetism is iron group of elements. What is antiferro, antiferri? So there is a large number of unpaired electrons here. So there are unpaired electrons, but there is some resultant unpaired electron. For example, here large number of unpaired electrons, ferromagnetic. Here also unpaired and unpaired electron, but there is a resultant unpaired electrons. These two electrons, if you consider, one is upward spin, another one is downward spin, completely filled. There is a resultant unpaired electron in the case of anti. In the case of ferrimagnetic material, there is a mismatch in the upward spin and downward spin, and leads to much lesser magnetism compared to this ferromagnetism. All these material, if you place them in a magnetic domain, so either the aligned to the field or opposed to the field. Aligned to the field or opposed to the field. Magnetic field that you are obtaining. Okay, so by now we know what is the reason for magnetic property of the materials at the macroscopic level. Our today's class is what happens to this magnetic property at the nanoscale. That is the study. Okay. So more on these magnetic macroscopic magnetic properties. So in single atom, if the atoms have unpaired electrons, they have a magnetic moment. But in the macroscopic, we have 10 power 23 atoms. A group of atoms in which the electrons are orienting in one direction. For example, you take a piece of material, assume that this is made up of some magnetic material. Okay. So This is bulk material, number of atoms are 10 power 23 and above. In that material, in the bulk material, within some domain, within some limit, or within some areas, all the electrons are having one orientation, maybe something like this. In another place, if you see, all the electrons within this area are having a different orientation. Or in some other place, okay, within the material, they are having a collection of electrons and they are oriented in one direction. You believe it or not, the average size of these domains typically few nanometers. And this physical area separation or distinction is known as magnetic domains. We have this much size of material. Within that, if you see, so in this area, all the electrons are in maybe one direction. In another area, the electrons are in this direction. In another area, maybe this direction, different direction. And there is a resultant magnetic moment in the bulk. The area or the physical separation within which all the electrons are having one orientation is known as domain. And these materials are magnetic materials, and the domains are called as magnetic domains. And it is 50 nanometer roughly nanometers. That is why I told in, I repeatedly told in several classes, at least 2-3 classes I mentioned, if anyone is studying about nanomaterials and nanotechnology, 3 terminologies you should be well versed. If you understand those 3 terminologies, you understand the nanoscale properties. 2 we have already completed previously, and today I am introduced to 1 terminology, that is magnetic domain size. So previous terminologies are exciton Bohr radius and mean free path of electrons in the metals. Now magnetic domain size of magnetic materials. Unless the grain size is reduced down to the size of this magnetic domain size, magnetic property will not be different from that of the bulk materials. Then we will see what happens when the magnetic domain size or the grain size is reduced down to the size of magnetic domain size. That's the today's class. Okay. So then in the material, where usually materials within the domains, the electrons are like this. When you take such material and place it in the magnetic field, and all the spins will be aligned. Either the magnetic fluxes will pass through or will oppose. Maybe I have a better cartoon, something like this. So aligned to the magnetic field in the case of magnetic materials, or opposed to the magnetic field if it is non-magnetic or diamagnetic materials. So this magnetic momentum or magnetic flux or magnetic property is quantified using a parameter called chi. This is chi value. You see that we know ferromagnetic materials are magnetic materials. Paramagnetic materials less. So ferromagnetic materials less. Ferromagnetic material chi value is very high. Any material, if you try to measure its chi value, if it is very large, blindfold and accept it is ferromagnetic materials. Then you can see the rest of the materials chi values are almost negligible. Non-magnetic. Copper is a non-magnetic or diamagnetic. Okay. So paramagnetism, single electrons. Ferro, antiferro, ferri, etc. Having large number of unpaired electrons. And between the ferro and ferri, the number of unpaired electrons are either resultant or mismatch, etc. Okay. So based on the chi value, it is possible to distinguish the type of the magnets. There is another class of classifying the magnetic materials, soft magnets and hard magnets. So as the name implies, soft magnets, they can be magnetized easily and demagnetized easily, momentarily. Okay. So like a transformer cores or starters or rotors, they fall under this category. Hard magnetic materials, so they are used in the loudspeaker, receivers, telephone receiver, communication, etc. How they are different? They are different in the MH curve or BH curve. What is MH curve or BH curve? So this is a magnetic field and magnetization. You take a material, place it in the magnetic field. So okay, apply the magnetic field from maybe some wire states to several thousands of wire states. So depending on the material, so there will be a picking up the magnetization. It will reach some saturation magnetization. Then now you remove the magnetic field. Depending on the type of the material, either it will have a little area, we call it as a loop, hysteresis loop, or some of the materials will have, they have a large hysteresis loop. As you see here, hard magnetic materials, they have a large hysteresis, large area in the BH curve or MH curve. Very little area in the case of soft magnetic materials. That's why it can be reversed, magnetization, remagnetization in the case of transformers. And they are all permanent magnets, hard magnets. This classification, I'm sure you would have read it. So iron, cobalt, nickel, as I told, they are all ferromagnetic materials. And it is possible to demagnetize magnetic materials without placing them in the magnetic field. How? You simply heat it. If you heat a magnetic material, magnetic material will lose its magnetic property. It may not directly become a non-magnet or unmagnetized conditions, but the magnetic property will be decreasing, changing. Especially ferromagnetic material will become paramagnetic at a particular temperature, and that temperature is known as Curie's temperature. Similarly, antiferromagnetic material will become paramagnetic material at particular temperature is known as Niels temperature. These are the numbers. Curie's temperature of iron is 770. It means that you take ferrum and heat up to 770 degree. It will not be no longer ferromagnetic. It will become paramagnetic. You take any antiferromagnetic material, you heat up to Tn, Niels temperature. It will not be no longer antiferromagnetic. It will become paramagnetic. Okay, so magnetic saturation versus temperature. And the extent of this, you can identify practically what kind of magnetic material it is by following this experiment. What you have to do, you have to measure the chi value and versus temperature. Then you follow this X inverse and chi inverse into CT. C is T is temperature, X is chi value, magnetization, and C is the Curie constant. It will follow linearity. Chi inverse versus temperature. It will follow linearity. So if it follows from the origin, linearity is starting from the origin, it is a Curie's law. Mostly ferromagnetic materials. Then if not, it is Curie-Weiss law. Okay, so they start from non-zero values. Okay, so now we will move to materials, nanomaterials. I'm sure this kind of cartoon you have already seen. What this slide shows, there are collection of atoms, grains, basically they are grains. Large grain, lesser size grain, very less grain, very less size grain. 5 particles, 5 grains. We know that as the grain size decreases, the number of surface atom increases. And there is a total number of atom decreasing. Cluster size 30 nanometer, total number of atom decreasing. Large number of atoms, countable number of atoms. and all the atoms are at the surface. Dispersion is 100%, nearly 100%, where the dispersion is only 50%. We know this phenomena. We have already seen it. What will reflect in the magnetic property if grains are transforming into this stage? Will the macroscopic magnetic property will remain same? Will the orientation of the electrons in the or the spins in the magnetic domain will be remain same in this case and in this case? If it remains the same, we will not see any difference in the magnetic property. But you can see that visually, definitely this magnetic domain will be affected. This is nearly bulk material. The size is micron. If not micron, maybe submicron. Large number of atoms, less number of surface atoms. Magnetic domains are held within the materials. Their spins will not be influenced by the size. The orientation of the magnetic domains or the spins of the electron within the magnetic domain in this grain is not affected. Definitely, the orientation or the spin of the electrons in the magnetic domain in this grain will be definitely affected. You will see that this grain size itself is equal to or less than that of the magnetic domain size. If this is micron, the grain size is micrometer, let's say 50 micrometer. And if this is a 40 nanometer, then this 40 nanometer is less than that of the magnetic domain size. Magnetic domain size is typically few nanometers, about 50 nanometer. If the grain size is reduced down to or equal to that of the magnetic domain size, these spins get affected. Those spins get affected. They get affected. When these spins orientations are getting affected, will result in the different magnetic property. Will result in different magnetic properties. Let's move on. So someone has quantified, what is this? Magnetic momentum per atom in BM, Bohr magnetrons, versus the cluster size. Please remember, so this is not total magnetic momentum. This is magnetic momentum per atom and versus size. Versus size. Large size, magnetic momentum per atom is nearly to that of the bulk material. This is bulk line. Then you think of, you make a 300 atoms, clusters consisting of 300 atoms. Now you measure the magnetic momentum per atom. It is no longer as that of the bulk. It is increased. Then you make a cluster size still down. We have only less than 100 or 100 atoms, iron atoms. For that grain or those grains, you measure the magnetic momentum per atom. It is totally different from that of the bulk materials. This is 2.2 bm and this is nearly 3 bm. In terms of percentage, significant percentage increase in the magnetic momentum per atom. Per atom. I'm talking about per atom. So it means that per atom magnetic momentum of the material in the bulk, and bulk is no difference. We'll have the same bulk magnetism magnitude, but per atom magnetic momentum of the nanostructured materials will be large. Will be large. I'll come to that. Not only iron, cobalt, nickel, even rhodium. There is increase in the magnetic momentum per atom. But already the number of atoms are decreasing. We know that. If the number of atoms are decreasing, magnetic momentum will decrease. But per atom magnetic momentum will increase at a nanoscale. This is one distinction compared to the bulk materials. Very specifically, if you measure the magnetic momentum of these nanostructured materials in the materials in the nanoscale, they don't show the usual ferromagnetic material. They show less, definitely. But that magnetic momentum is much higher than that of the paramagnetic materials. What are paramagnetic material? Materials having unpaired electron, single unpaired electrons are paramagnetic material. How much is the magnetic momentum? We have seen it will be based on the mu is equal to root of n into n plus 2. If it is one unpaired electron, 1.33 Bohr magneton. If it is two, respective magnetic momentum. That momentum, if you measure for the ferromagnetic material at a nanoscale, it is not equal to that of the ferromagnetic material, but it is exceedingly high compared to the conventional paramagnetic materials. The magnetic momentum of the superparamagnetic materials or magnetic materials at nanoscales are exceedingly high compared to that of the paramagnetic materials, and we call such materials as superparamagnetic materials. So it means ferromagnetic materials will get transformed into superparamagnetic materials. It is no longer behave as a ferromagnetic materials, but will be less, but the magnitude will be very exceedingly high compared to the paramagnetic material, and we call such nano clusters or nanomaterials as superparamagnetic materials or superparamagnets. How this happens? You see here, so this is a gadolinium material, GD, gadolinium. It loses its ferromagnetic, becomes paramagnetic, but magnitude is very high. So this size, largest size 60 nanometer, 75 nanometer, 3.4 nanometer, 1.6 nanometer, 1 nanometer, etc. Depending on them, their magnetic momentum is different, but that magnetic momentum is much higher than that of the paramagnetic. The conventional call them as superparamagnetic materials. When it can happen? Again, this is material dependence, ferromagnetic materials, until you reach the grain size DC, which is known as critical dimension or critical diameter. Okay, so the material will show usual ferromagnetic behavior or any other magnetic behavior. Once the grain size is reduced down to DC, ferromagnetic materials are getting transformed into superparamagnetic materials. This is the difference compared to the bulk and the nano. And the magnetic momentum of these superparamagnets are exceedingly high compared to the conventional paramagnetic materials. We call such magnetic materials as paramagnetic atoms or molecules. You remember when we dealt with the optical properties, we call them as superatoms because they behaved very exceedingly. The optical properties are so good, catalytic properties are so good. Anything exceedingly performing, we had a prefix, right? Super. Capacitor we know. Now we have a supercapacitors. Conductor we have, and then there are conductors with conduction with zero resistance. We name them as a superconductors. Similarly, paramagnetism we have, paramagnetic materials we have, but the magnitude is very high. You attach a prefix super. And this happens in the nanoscale materials, very specifically ferromagnetic materials. What are the characteristics? These are the characteristics of a superparamagnetic material. How will you identify? Okay, you have been given some nanomaterials, and so they told it is made from some ferromagnetic materials. How will you identify whether there is a real superparamagnetism existing or not? This is the diagnosis. Superparamagnetic materials will not show hysteresis. Then their MH curve is highly temperature influencing. And the spins in the domain, they are influenced by the temperature. When it is a temperature dependent means that spin flip also. So depending on, so when the grain size is reduced down to nano, with down to the size of the domain, so the spins orienting in this direction, okay, even with a little temperature influence, will go down. And it will not stay there, it will flip back and forth, upwards flip and downward flip. And the time required for flipping and up flipping and downward flipping is known as Néel relaxation time. And the temperature at which this is happening is known as Néel temperature. You believe it or not, in future, this flipping, upwards flipping and downward flipping of the spins in the magnetic materials will become the basis for data storage. Will become a data storage. A new technology is coming up, HAMR, heat assisted magnetic storage or magnetic recording. Unlimited data storage is possible using this superparamagnetic materials. This is what I was talking to you. No hysteresis. Unlike in the bulk material, there is hysteresis. There is hysteresis here, bulk materials. Depending on the soft magnet, hard magnet, there is a hysteresis. But in the case of superparamagnetic materials, there is no hysteresis. You take a ferromagnetic material, make it into a nanoparticle, then you place it in the magnetic flux, okay, increase the magnetic field to, this is a 2 kilohertz states, then you remove the magnetic field, it will follow the same path. No hysteresis. This is the characteristic. This is the characteristic of superparamagnetic materials. And this will become the basis for data storage. Currently, this much is the data storage capacity, 667 gigabytes per inch square. But with this Néel flipping time or Néel relaxation time associated with the superparamagnetic materials, in the name of heat assisted magnetic recording, HMR, there is going to be an unlimited data storage in a given smaller grain materials. So only requirement is you will have to place that maybe SD card or anything a little elevated temperature depending on the material at certain temperature. Then so it will become a unlimited data storage device using HAMR. That is why these nanomaterials have become fascinating. How this happens? Why nanomaterials show exceedingly high superparamagnetic nature or paramagnetic nature? What happens? So in the bulk, let's say this is the bulk size, Grain size is a micron. Okay, so within the micron grain size, so there are magnetic domains. The spins are oriented. Now you take this bulk material and subdivide it into nano. Assume that you have subdivided into this much size. The grain size is almost equal to or less than that of the magnetic domain size. Then let's say we have here 1000 electrons, 1000 spins. All these 1000 spins were orienting in one direction in the bulk. Like this, there are several such domains. Now in a nano domain or nano materials, only one tiny grain size is equal or less than that of the magnetic domain size. All the spins will act as a single electron. Or all the spins in this magnetic domain of a nano clusters will act as a bar magnet. In the bulk, single electron will act as a bar magnet and contribute to the bulk. In the nanoscale, thousands of electrons will act as a single electron. When we have one electron, one unpaired electron, we have a bar magnetic moment 1.33, 1.37, etc. according to root of mu equal to root of n into n plus 2 Bohr magneton. Now, if you replace in that equation 10,000 or 10,000, so much Bohr magneton will have. The grain itself is acting as a single electron, single bar magnet. That is why the magnetic momentum per atom at nanoscale will be very high compared to the conventional paramagnetism will be very high, and you name it as a super paramagnetic material. The take home point is ferromagnetic materials getting transformed into super paramagnetic materials if the grain size is made down to the size of magnetic domain size. And the characteristics are, they don't show hysteresis in the BH curve or MH curve. Okay. And then it is highly temperature dependent. We have a nil relaxation time. In one moment, you will see spins are in this, the 1000 electrons are in this orientation. Suddenly, you will see down orientation. Flipping is there. So this can become the basis for data storage in the future. Connected to this, another terminology we have, nanofluids. Fluids, we know it is having a flow property. Okay, so gasoline has a flow property, or fuel, liquid fuels have a flow property, or any other liquids, or some semi-solids have a flow properties. Now nanofluids, something related to nano, so nano size. A flowing property, a material having the flow property in which some nanoparticles are dispersed. Such fluids are known as nanofluids. So the nanomaterials could be nanoparticles, nanofibers, nanotubes, nanowires, nanorods, nanosheets, or nanodroplets. In some liquids, it may be water, alcohol, ethanol, methanol, or petrol, or any other liquid, common liquid, in which some metals or metal oxides or even carbon materials or even some polymers might have been dissolved. Then you name such fluids as the nanofluids. So nanofluids generally will have two phases. One solid phase, they are made up of either metals, metal oxide, carbide, ceramics, even carbon materials, carbon functionalized materials. We will see functionalization later, second unit. Then we'll have another liquid phase, maybe a water, ethanol, ethylene, or organic molecules, organic solvents, even gasoline, or anything, or lubricants. And believe it or not, these nanofluids show different properties. They show different properties compared to the fluids, conventional fluids. They have enhanced thermal conductivity, thermal diffusivity, viscosity, etc. Closely connected to nanofluids is Ferrofluids. What are ferrofluids? Few minutes I will complete. So what are ferrofluids? They contain some magnetic particles in the liquid. Or ferrofluids are also known as magnetic liquids. So we know that this ferromagnetic materials, iron, cobalt, nickel, you subdivide them into nano size. They will transform into superparamagnetic materials. Then take these grains, add it to some liquid phase, maybe some solvent. With water, the simplest can be water or any oil, organic liquid, etc. Then that combination, liquid and superparamagnetic material, is known as magnetic fluids, and it gets attracted to the physical magnet. And if you would have had a physical class, we would have had this experiment. So it's the simplest nanofluid one can prepare in any lab. So ferrofluids consist of this made from ferric chloride and ferrous chloride, dissolving them in the suitable electrolyte. It's a very textbook experiment. Any UG lab one can do. You make a ferric chloride and a ferrous chloride. Okay, so then you slowly mix them with the use of ammonia. Then you decant it, disperse it in a liquid. Then take a physical magnet and will get attract. The particles, this consists of liquid phase and solid phase. Solid phase is derived from the ferromagnetic material, then it is transformed into superparamagnetic materials. The magnetism, the paramagnetic nature is exceedingly high. That's why we call them as a superparamagnetic materials. And you see that this get attracted to the magnet. So a simple experiment one can do. That's not very important. The importance are application of these nanofluids or ferrofluids. These are the applications, some of the applications. Rotary shafts, something like this. Okay, braking or loudspeakers. You can have a magnetic printing, and these ferrofluids are used in drug delivery. This we have already started witnessing. You see that the music quality or the sound quality that we can get from any music system, if you compare 30 years before or 20 years before now, it is improved or it is same or it is worse. I'm sure you will agree with me, it is improved. All the instruments used to create the music can be heard thanks to these ferrofluids. The black coating that you see on the speakers, loudspeakers or speakers, they are all made up of ferrofluids, a nano coating. They arrest dampness. They arrest the dampness, and you can hear the clear music. This is one application. The other applications are rotary shaft like a brake, then magnetic printing. Okay, so if anybody would like to and a drug delivery, so you can attach some medicine or the drugs to these ferromagnetic materials, and it can be selectively targeted to the place where it has to be delivered. Ferrofluids can become vehicle for drug delivery. Okay, some more on this drug delivery in the last unit we will see. So ferromagnetic materials getting transformed into superparamagnetic materials, use them as a ferrofluids for different applications. Use of nanotechnology, nano applications. So if you allow me, I can complete this property also. I think nothing is there in the mechanical properties. So this is the last nanoscale properties. We have already seen thermal, electric, melting point, lattice parameter, density of states, optical property, electrical property. Today we have seen magnetic property, and the last property is mechanical property. It is to do with the strength of the materials. Materials become strong at nanoscale. There is a saying, there is a witness also, not only saying, carbon nanotubes are having much higher strength compared to the steel. You see here, copper with the 6 nanometer particles having 5 times higher hardness compared to the bulk copper. Palladium hardness consisting of 5 to 10 nanometer grain is having 5 times higher than that of bulk materials. Mechanical strength increases at a nanoscale, not necessarily only for carbon, for other materials also. You see here, this is for sodium chloride. Somebody made sodium chloride viscous. What are viscous? Some spikes, like needle-like particles, and measured is their elastic limit, strength they have measured. So they had a size 20 micrometer, 15 micrometer, 10 micrometer, 5 micrometer, 2 micrometer, 1 micrometer. What do we see? As the grain size decreases, strength increases. And they are not nano, still micron. This is large micron, less micron. Even before moving towards the nano, mechanical strength of the materials are increasing. You need not go down to the nano. Even at the micron scale, materials show increased mechanical strength. Why? These are the two reasons. The material may become free from impurities. So materials show brittleness if they have defects, or if they have dislocations, or if the material is having an impurity. When you make a nanomaterials, materials become, or they are having less impurities. They are free from dislocations, microteens, okay, so impurities. So then pure material will definitely have a better mechanical strength. The other reason is surface perfections. Surface may not have defects, smooth surfaces. It is hard to break smooth surfaces unless it is having some defect. These are the two reasons why mechanical properties of the materials are different from that of the materials. I don't say just different, mechanical property increases, strength increases, not only for carbon, for all materials. We will see separately for carbon more on this regard. Okay, so the take home point in the case of mechanical property is mechanical strength increases when you move from bulk to nano, because the material may become more perfection, may be free from the impurities, dislocations, and the surface also may not have a surface defects. So higher mechanical strength will. To summarize, this is what I have taken few more minutes. I want to end this today. So this is what we have seen last 10-15 classes in my count. So when we move from bulk to nano, there is a lowering of the melting point, and there is a lowering of phase transition temperature, and there is a reduction in the lattice constant. Then optical properties are different from that of the bulk materials. It means appearance of the materials are different for the bulk material and nanoscale materials. Nanoscale materials, nanostructured materials, metals or semiconductors or insulators, they appear different color. Gold loses its color, changes to red, blue, even colorless. We have seen reason why. Band gap engineering, density of rate decreasing, Absorption is different, emission is different, and in the case of metals, we have seen surface Boltzmann resonance. Since the band gap is increased in the case of metals and insulators, there is decrease in the conductivity. Even in the case of metals, if there is a development of Kubo gap, will result in development of band gap. Even metals will show decreased conductivity. Exceptions are polymeric fiber materials and carbon materials. Then today we have seen magnetic materials. Ferromagnetic materials at the bulk, they don't show the same ferromagnetic materials, and they get transformed into superparametric materials at a nanoscale. And this Bohr magneton is very high compared to the conventional paramagnetism, and you call them as a superparametrics. In the case of mechanical properties, so when we move from bulk to nano, materials show increased mechanical strength because they become pure or associated with less impurities or no defect. So to summarize further, these are the reasons we have seen. Why nanostructured materials show different properties compared to the bulk materials? Large fraction of surface atoms. Since large fraction of surface atoms, they are also associated with the large surface energy. Then the electrons or the particles said to be in the confined environment, quantum confined environment, results in the density of states less, band gap increasing, Kubo gap developing, electrical properties are different, optical properties are different. Then reduce imperfections. I think I'm done. Oh, it is difficult to follow. Anything would like to add? Anybody? So we end unit 1 today. You learned something? I hope you learned something. So SF students, please wait. I will take a few classes. So we will refresh. Anybody would like to add anything on this?
Sir, while measuring mechanical property of a material, we
Yes.
use stress strain test in material science laboratory. In this, the graph is shown that you used size and elastic property. How it is
Yes.
measured, how it's differ from normal material to nanomaterial measurement.
So I cannot generalize for all mechanical properties because so for example, Young's modulus of the material can be measured, elasticity of the material can be measured, or the brittleness of the material can be measured. So they are measured with respect to the nanoparticles. So you have a material basically, in the bulk, the grain sizes are large. In nanomaterials, the grains are in the nanometers. That's the only difference. So materials made up of bulk grain, materials made up of nanograins. The measurement is same. Measurement is same. Whether you are measuring Young's modulus or elasticity or brittleness, etc. Measurement is same. The materials are different. Or the material is chemical composition is same, but the grain sizes are different. Bulk size, now nano size. It's not. So it's not a single. It's not single particles. Collection of nanoparticles. Then you plot against the size.
Yes, sir. So it is possible to use nanofluids as a bearing fluid.
As a
Bearing fluids. So instead of friction contact or roller bearing, can we able to use magnetized nanofluid as a bearing,
so
a
this
fluid
this
between shaft and bearing?
this ferrofluids are used as a magnetic shaft. That's like braking. You get a much better braking applications. Shaft. So that is similar to using use in a bearing, right? So maybe you need to have a what friction. Maybe in one application you require more friction, and in the case of bearing application, bearing, na, you do not have the bearing. You do not have the friction.
So
So
it's the same
definitely
molecule which is
it is used for magnetic braking applications. Maybe possible for bearing application also.
yes, sir,
So
because
not
if
only
the fluid start repel the shaft, it will be a perfect bearing material.
yes, it can should be possible. Okay, thank you. So I have already transmitted the PPT. Okay, I shared. In fact, I shared my folder in my Gmail. I hope all of you could be able to access it. If anybody has any issue, please report me. And there are other announcement. So yesterday we had a program committee. Your so CR would have informed you. There is upcoming internal first internal for you. It is planned, I think, 8th or 9th of February, and the schedule will be displayed to you. And we have already recommended 2 candidates for MNRE fellowships as per the norms available. I hope MNRE will grant them, accept their applications as we had previous years. Then there is a fortunate for the admitted candidates. We already have recommended one candidate, one student for SA fellowship. So you may know that from your SA friends, the strength has been increased from 8 to 16 from this year. So SAF South Asia Foundation has increased the vacancy from 8 to 16. So it means more than one candidate from each SAARC countries are admitted, minimum 2, maximum 3. So in that regard, so Indian students strength also is being increased to 3. So apart from the top rank holder, the next 2 rank holders admitted students also will get this SAF fellowship. So you must be very fortunate to have this. I don't know who are they. So we will let you know the details after getting the approval from SAF. Okay. So anything else you would like to add? Nurul, please wait for 1 or 2 more weeks. We are trying to get the approval, and then we will be able to send the admission offer through proper channel to your embassy. Okay, so
And
we
sir,
will
what about now?
we will try our best
Sir,
for all of us, for all of us, for all of you.
okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Sir, after
Yeah.
getting the admission letter, then I will
Thank you so much,
with the
sir.
embassy.
Sir, sir,
Yeah, you can after that only you can go
thank,
for the embassy. But as of now, you don't
thank you,
require
thank you,
visa
sir.
because now classes are held online. I think next 1 month also will be held online. So unless the
Okay.
campus is opened and the international mobility is opened, you will stay there. I
Yes,
hope it
sir.
is not all along.
Yeah, I hope so, sir.
Yes. So then there is no urgency in applying for the visa as of now. Okay,
Okay.
so the necessary steps will be taken. We will get you the required document through our international office in due time. So the very offer letter itself is yet to be sent, right, for all of you. That I am talking about. So I hope it may be ready in a week or two.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. And after that only the SAF students will be allowed to, or I will try before that. Definitely after we get you the actual offer letter, you will be given the ID for registering in the SAMS. So till then you start attending classes. Okay. So
Okay.
Setharaman and Alice, you can instruct them, or you can give them some guidance about what are the hard courses and softcore courses, on what basis they are taking. You can educate them. If they require, they can contact me. I can explore them. So a few more SA friends are coming. Okay, so they may be maybe next class or next class they will be joining. At least four more.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Sir,
Yes,
sir,
please.
the internal exam is on January 8th or February 8th?
So you are having a classes for last how many months? 1 month over, more than 1 month over. 4th November we have started the classes, right? It's about 2 months, and you want to have the first internal in February. The upcoming internal is
No, sir. I heard,
18th
I
January.
heard that you are saying February last time. That's why.
No,
Just to clarify.
January. Next week.
Okay. Okay.
Next week.
Thanks.
In February, you have a second internal. And you please note that your end semester exam will start in March 1st. We are going to, all of you have, along with you, we also have a tough time. You have to complete the syllabus. You have to give the 2 internal and complete the portion, etc. Okay. So January there is an internal. So first for the already admitted candidate, for late admitted candidate, we will schedule later separately within January. Then second internal will be similar to that of everybody. Okay. End semester exam in March first week. It will start from first March and end within 15 days. Okay. See you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
So we try to meet using the same link for next class. Then after we finalize this link for our upcoming classes.
What is it?
So we using a new link now, sir, for meeting class.
Yes.
We will try the same link for next class, and then we finalize this link, sir.
How to have the same link for next class?
Yes, sir. We just use the last 8-digit alphabetic, sir, because every link for.
Oh, from hereafter only this will be the meeting list.
Yes, sir.
I will share this now.
Just we have to enter that words BOY.
This only this is enough.
Yes, sir. This one is enough, sir.
Oh, why this option is enabled recently or what?
No, sir. Already I told about this option to user, but I did not.
Oh, I didn't know, because we have been scheduling for each day using a different URL or meeting link.
Yes,
okay, so we can use this one.
Yes,
okay.
Sir, but this is the first time we practically testing this, sir. But theoretically, I found that a link is valid for 90 days, sir. If we won't use the same link for 90 days, then only it get deleted.
Okay, so we can stick with this URL, right, or link. Yes, I can delete all the other scheduled classes, because that will pop up now in your email or in your calendar, etc.
Is for next one class, please don't delete those things for next until next session, sir, because we have to test it, sir.
Okay. So then maybe this everybody will have it and they will input in that Google Meet and they can join. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We use
And
this. We
so
post this
and I have to admit them.
Yes, sir. You have to admit them.
Oh, okay.
Because the problem with we is if we created the link, you can't able to
Okay.
record, sir.
Okay.
That's why I asked you to create.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.